They say pressure reveals cracks, but in my case, it was a whisper, soft, persistent, and coming from the wrong direction. My name is Dominic Raye. I'm 52, and I live in London. I built my high-tech manufacturing company from the ground up, but that day, as I sat in my glass-walled office overlooking the Thames, I wasn't thinking about legacy or IPOs. I was staring at a prototype circuit module that could make or break our next military contract. The hum of the HVAC system was the only sound until Alicia, my assistant, poked her head in. "Mr. Raye, your wife called again. Something about the Bellwood Conservatory donation?" I didn't look up. "Again. She says it's urgent. It's the third time this morning." I sighed and finally set the circuit down. "Tell her I'll call back." Alicia hesitated. "She said Dr. Morrow wants to finalize the pledge today." Dr. Julian Morrow. I'd heard his name too many times lately, always tethered to some gala or initiative at Bellwood, the prestigious design school Amelia, our oldest daughter, was desperate to get into. Apparently, it wasn't enough for her to be talented. The school also had to know we were important. "Thanks, Alicia. That'll be all." She nodded and closed the door quietly. I leaned back and rubbed my temple. Celeste had been pushing for a larger donation. No, philanthropic partnership to Bellwood for months. She framed it as a strategic social move. "Everyone's doing it," she said last week, showing me a list of board members and parent sponsors. "Do you really want to be the only power couple in Kensington not funding the arts?" Later that evening, at home, she brought it up again over dinner. "They're reviewing admissions right now," Celeste said, swirling her wine. "This is the moment to demonstrate our commitment. Julian says a well-timed gesture can go a long way." "You mean money," I said. She laughed softly, brushing her golden hair over her shoulder. "Don't be so cynical." I set down my fork. "Why does Morrow have so much sway over admissions?" Celeste didn't answer right away. "He's the chair of the board. They trust him." "I'll bet they do." She narrowed her eyes at me, tone suddenly sharp. "Don't start with your insinuations. Then don't treat me like an ATM." A long silence settled between us before she pushed her chair back and disappeared upstairs without another word. I was still finishing my drink when Elsie, our younger daughter, wandered in, wearing her panda slippers and dragging a stuffed unicorn by the tail. "Is it true?" she asked, climbing onto a bar stool. "That Amelia's not getting in?" I frowned. "What?" She looked at me solemnly. "She and Mum were fighting earlier. Amelia said Mum promised she'd make it happen. But Mum said it wasn't that simple. Then Amelia cried and slammed her door." I stared at her, unsure what to say. "She also said that if it doesn't work out, it'll be your fault." That hit me harder than anything my wife had said. I kissed Elsie's forehead and sent her back to bed. And then I sat there alone, in the dark kitchen, thinking about how a school application had turned my family into a chessboard, with Celeste moving pieces and whispering to a man she suddenly had far too much time for. Something was wrong. I could feel it. And I was going to find out what. The next morning, I made a call I hadn't planned to make again. Not since the last time, I needed to discreetly track a rival board member suspected of industrial espionage. "Neil Hart," came the gravel-voiced answer after one ring. "Neil. It's Dominic Raye." There was a pause. "Bloody hell. That's a name I haven't heard in a while." "Trouble?" "Nothing official. Personal." Another pause. "All right. You're paying. I'm listening." I met Neil that evening in a tucked-away private booth at a pub in Westminster. He was still the same rumpled coat, half scowl, eyes like a wolf. MI5 had spit him out when he got too interested in the moral gray zones. That was exactly why I needed him now. My wife's been spending a lot of time with a man named Dr. Julian Morrow, head of the Bellwood Conservatory Board. He raised an eyebrow. "You think she's having an affair?" "I don't know what I think. But I know she's pushing hard for our daughter's admission. And she says Morrow's the key." "Ah." He pulled out a notebook. "You want eyes. Ears. Phones if possible." I nodded. Quietly. He scribbled something. "You'll have a folder by Monday." I didn't sleep much that weekend. I watched Celeste play hostess at a fundraiser on Saturday, laughing too loudly and squeezing elbows with people I only recognized from business pages. She introduced Morrow to me with an arm touch that lasted a bit too long. He was lean, tan, charismatic in that overroomed, so less way some men perfect. When he spoke to me, he didn't ask a single question about my company, only about whether I had a love of the arts. Monday morning, the folder was waiting on my desk, just as promised. Inside, photos. Dozens of them. Celeste and Morrow at cafes, entering his Mayfair flat at midnight, leaving hours later. One photo showed her in gym clothes, brushing a hand through his hair by his building's entrance. Another of them laughing in a private booth at a wine bar in Notting Hill. There were no gaps in context. Then came the records. Wire transfers. A separate account opened in Celeste's name 3 months ago, under a charitable shell organization. The deposits matched donations made to Bellwood from anonymous benefactors. Except they were routed, partially back to her. Kickbacks. Then came the bombshell. Morrow's emails, captured by a burner program Neil still had access to from his freelance cybersecurity work. In them, he joked with an associate about tightening the noose on parents who wanted in. Dominic's wife is pliable, one said. Smart, but greedy. The daughter thinks she's earned her place. It's sweet. Another message chilled me. Amelia's rejection was rubber-stamped, but Celeste wants guarantees. Told her to keep the money coming, make him look like the problem. I stared at that one for a long time. That night, Amelia came home late. I pretended to be dozing on the couch when I heard her unlock the door. She walked straight past me, didn't say goodnight. Her phone lit up as she climbed the stairs. Morrow's name flashed across the screen. I followed her up 10 minutes later. I paused at her door and listened. Mum said he'll cave. He always does, she whispered. And if he doesn't, well, he'll look like he doesn't care. A pause. A soft laugh. I know. It's working. That was the moment I knew. It wasn't just Celeste. Amelia knew. She was part of it. The betrayal was complete. They thought I was passive. They thought I wouldn't fight. They forgot how I built my empire. I don't swing wildly. I don't scream. I build. I document. And then, when the time is right, I dismantle everything. By Tuesday morning, I was no longer a husband or father in the traditional sense. I was something else. An observer. A strategist. A man pulling back from the fire to watch which way the smoke curled. Celeste was already gone when I came down for breakfast. A note on the counter said she was meeting Julian about next month's scholarship auction. The handwriting was tidy. The lie was bold. I buttered my toast slowly, wondering how long she'd been preparing this performance. By mid-afternoon, I'd already met with my financial advisor, a man named Clive who'd been with me since my company was little more than a home workshop and a patent filing. We met in a nondescript office near Chancery Lane, far from the public eye. I need to restructure, I said, sliding the photos across the table. Clive adjusted his glasses and looked down. His eyes scanned quickly but methodically. When he looked up, there was no shock. Just that quiet, calculated nod I'd come to rely on. How deeply do you want to bury this? Deep enough that she can't touch it. Trusts? Offshores? Asset shielding? All of it. And I want you to draw up a new prenup, post-dated, airtight. Make sure she never sees it coming. Clive scribbled notes. And the daughters? Elsie's protected, I said. Put her education fund in a trust under my name only. As for Amelia, I paused, jaw tightening. She's old enough to pick a side. She already has. Clive said nothing, just nodded again. After that meeting, I called my legal team under the pretense of updating some board documents. In reality, I had them draft 2 exit strategies, one for a contested divorce, the other for asset sequestration in case of fraud allegations. I told them I was prepping for an acquisition scenario, which wasn't a lie. I was preparing to be acquired, just not by her. That night, I came home late. Celeste was already in bed, her laptop glowing softly on the nightstand. She glanced up. You were at the office late. I nodded, toeing off my shoes. She closed the laptop. Julian says the conservatory's board is looking at donor families more closely this cycle. He thinks. Julian thinks a lot of things, I said, pulling back the covers. She froze slightly, then relaxed and smiled. Well, he knows how to navigate institutions like this. I'd listen. I didn't respond. A couple of nights later, I overheard her on the phone with him. She was pacing the patio, voice low but clear through the kitchen window. He's preparing something. I can tell. But he won't do anything until after Amelia hears. The rejection will make him fold. It always does. She laughed softly. You'll be there when it happens, right? She'll need someone. It took everything I had not to walk outside and shatter that phone against the stone tiles. Instead, I went upstairs. I opened my laptop. I reviewed my plans. Everything was in motion. They thought I was the mark. But they forgot who designed the board. And I always play for checkmate. Amelia's rejection letter arrived on a Thursday. A slim envelope from Bellwood Conservatory, postmarked and unceremonious. No call. No invitation. Just cold, printed words. I was in the study when I heard her scream. It wasn't a sob. It wasn't even crying. It was sharp, angry, a sound closer to something feral than fragile. I stayed seated. I already knew what it said. Moments later, Celeste came storming in, her face tight, her cheeks flushed with a rage I hadn't seen in years. "You knew," she hissed. I looked up from my screen slowly. "Knew what?" "Don't play games, Dominic." Amelia was supposed to get in. We had an understanding. An understanding with who? The man you've been screwing for 6 months? Her mouth fell open. "How dare you," she said. "I could ask you the same," I replied calmly. I just chose to wait until the truth arrived in a white envelope. She stared at me like she didn't recognize me. And maybe she didn't. Because I wasn't the man who used to avoid confrontation for the sake of appearances. That man had vanished somewhere between Julian Morrow's flat and Amelia's whispered betrayal. Amelia barreled in next, eyes red, the letter crumpled in her fist. "I didn't get in," she snapped. "How could you let this happen?" "Let it happen?" I stood now, finally. "You were rejected, Amelia. That has nothing to do with me." "You could have done something," she shouted, her voice shaking. "You didn't give enough. You didn't push hard enough. You let them say no to me." I laughed bitterly. "You think money gets you everything? It got you everything." She screamed. "You're nothing without it." Celeste cut in, her voice suddenly icy. "This is what I meant when I said you were emotionally negligent. You've always been too cold, too distant. You shut down when we needed you most. And now our daughter has been complicit in bribery and fraud," I finished. "I have the emails, Celeste. The transfers. The recordings. I know everything." The room went still. Amelia's eyes darted from me to her mother. "What is he talking about?" Celeste didn't answer. I tilted my head. "She didn't tell you the deal fell apart weeks ago? That Julian's influence was slipping? That the board was watching?" I thought," Amelia stammered. "You thought the money would make it all go away," I said. "But it didn't. And now, you want me to fix it." Again. Neither of them said anything. "Fine," Celeste finally said. "Then let's stop pretending. I want a divorce." I nodded once. "Of course you do." She blinked, caught off guard by my lack of resistance. "I'll have the papers drawn up," I said. "Just sign them when they arrive." "You're not going to fight me?" she asked. "Oh, I'm not fighting," I said with a thin smile. "Not yet." And then I turned away, silent, patient. Because she didn't know it yet. But the trap was already locked. The trap was timed to precision, like a circuit board engineered for one perfect surge. That Monday morning, at exactly 9 a.m., 4 packages were delivered simultaneously, one to Celeste's lawyer, one to the Bellwood Conservatory Board, one to a mid-tier London press agency that owed me a favor, and the 4th to Amelia. I had debated whether to send her one. She was still my daughter, even if she tried to use me like a pawn. But in the end, I decided she deserved to know exactly how much she'd traded for a seat she was never going to earn. By 9:15, my phone rang. I didn't answer. At 9:32, Alicia stepped into my office, face pale. "Mr. Raye, someone from the Ledger is holding on line 2. They're saying it's urgent." I didn't answer that either. Instead, I turned to the surveillance monitor in my office and watched a live security feed of the conservatory's front entrance. The press were already gathering. Someone from the board must have leaked the story. I sipped my coffee and waited. By 10:12, the internet had begun chewing through the documents like wild dogs on raw meat. Screenshots of Morrow's emails. Financial spreadsheets tracing illegal kickbacks. Photos of Celeste and Julian entering hotels under fake names. The list of pre-rejected students whose families had donated, including Amelia's name near the top. By 10:44, Julian Morrow was seen being escorted out of Bellwood by a stone-faced security team, refusing to answer questions as flashbulbs snapped like gunfire around him. At 11:03, my phone lit up with a message from Elsie. "Mom's crying in the kitchen. Amelia's locked in her room. What's going on?" I paused, then typed back. "Stay in your room. I'll come get you later." And still, I didn't answer any calls. By noon, the firm managing the Bellwood Endowment released a statement about serious allegations of misconduct. Social media turned feral. Hashtags exploded. Hashtag Bellwood bribe. Hashtag corruption conservatory. Hashtag Morrow money machine. At 12:26, a new message from Amelia popped up. "Dad, how could you?" And attached to it, a photo of the envelope I sent her. The cover page of the document was simple. A timeline of deception. How my wife and her lover tried to sell our daughter's future. It detailed every dollar, every manipulated connection, every backroom promise. It included dates, login times, even Celeste's meeting schedule, cross-referenced with Julian's calendar entries. There was no wiggle room, no deniability, just hard proof of betrayal wrapped in manicured charity. A few minutes later, I got another message. This one from Celeste. "You vindictive bastard." I smiled just a little. At 2 p.m., a reporter from the Daily Echo tweeted a blurry photo of Julian Morrow being led into a police car. Allegations had gone beyond bribery, tax evasion, witness tampering, data manipulation. The charges stacked like dominoes. And where was I? Nowhere. I wasn't seen. I wasn't heard. I had pulled every string and then cut them all. By 3 p.m., Celeste had left 6 voicemails. The last one, slurred and desperate. "Dominic, we need to fix this. Julian's, he's gone. They took him. You can't let this go further. Amelia's breaking. Please, please." I turned my phone off. By dusk, I was already in another property, far from London, tucked inside a converted warehouse that had served as my think tank for over a decade. Screens lined the walls. My legal team worked in the background, preparing for the fallout. One of my private aides handed me a fresh printout. On the front page, Bellwood scandal, the high price of privilege. At the center, a picture of Celeste mid-scream, shielding her face from a camera lens. And below it, Amelia, head bowed, the envelope still in her hands. I leaned back in my chair, expression unreadable. This wasn't revenge. It was clarity. And now everyone saw it. The beauty of silence is that it's never neutral. It either shields or isolates. I chose to wield it. While Celeste scrambled for damage control and Julian Morrow sat in a holding cell, I moved. Quietly. Efficiently. My first call was to Dr. Ilana Whitaker, the acting president of Bellwood Conservatory. She wasn't involved in the scandal. In fact, her name hadn't come up once in Neil Hart's report, which made her valuable. We met in a discreet corner booth at the Rosemont Club, where no one asked questions and fewer recognized faces. She was cautious, rigid at first, until I opened the conversation with 3 words. "I believe in reform." Her brow lifted slightly. "That's not what the press is saying." "They're not wrong," I said, taking a slow sip of tea. "But I didn't burn your school to the ground. I exposed rot. There's a difference." She studied me. "I'm prepared to donate a substantial scholarship endowment, enough to fund 15 full-ride placements for students from underrepresented backgrounds." Her lips parted slightly in surprise. "That's generous. And sudden." "It's conditional," I continued. "You'll install a full-time ethics officer. Remove all current board members pending review. Accept an independent audit of the past 5 years of admissions and finances. And name the fund after my father, Victor Raye. He was a welder who believed in second chances." There was a long pause. Finally, she nodded. "I think we can make that happen." That was the opening salvo. Simultaneously, my legal team filed motions to freeze all joint marital accounts. The funds Celeste had hidden through charitable trusts were now flagged under tax fraud investigations. Her high-priced divorce lawyer, handpicked months ago, dropped her as a client within 24 hours. Word travels quickly when you're radioactive. Julian Morrow, meanwhile, was denied bail. A magistrate deemed him a flight risk with potential access to offshore assets. New charges surfaced daily. Fabricated grants. Manipulated student records. Testimonies from former Bellwood faculty. Even a staff janitor came forward with recorded hallway conversations. Morrow wasn't careful about where he bragged. And then came the personal blows. Celeste's social circles dissolved like sugar in boiling water. The Kensington brunches stopped. The whispers turned into pointed fingers. No one wanted to be associated with the woman who sold her daughter's name for admission and sold herself for influence. She called again. I didn't answer. Elsie, meanwhile, remained untouched. Her trust fund had been quietly moved offshore under a different custodian structure. She didn't need to know yet, but one day she would. She would understand that protection doesn't always come wrapped in warmth. Sometimes it arrives through steel decisions. As for Amelia, she disappeared from the public eye. No more Instagram updates. No university announcement. No media statements. Just silence. She knew what was coming. Because I didn't come for revenge. I came to reset the balance. They tried to use power as leverage. But I don't leverage power. I own it. The meeting with Amelia was quiet, scheduled, not spontaneous. I sent her a message through my attorney. No theatrics. Just a time, a place, and a simple line. You deserve to know where we stand. She arrived at the cafe in Chelsea 5 minutes late, dressed in soft gray like she was trying to disappear. Her eyes were hollow, mascara washed away by days of damage control. She looked older than 19, tired in the way people get when the scaffolding around them collapses and they're forced to see what holds them up. She sat across from me without a word. The silence stretched. Finally, she spoke. "I didn't think you'd want to see me." I nodded. There was a time I didn't. She looked down, fingers gripping the edge of her teacup. "I didn't know it would go that far. I just wanted to get in. I thought Mum had it under control." "She didn't," I said evenly. "And you knew that." Tears filled her eyes, but I didn't reach across the table. "You lied to me," I continued. "Not just about the application. About who you were becoming." "I didn't mean to," she whispered. I didn't think I'd get in on my own." I let the words hang. "You wanted what you thought the name could buy," I said. "The social capital, the prestige, the idea of belonging to some elite world." She nodded slowly, eyes shining now. "And I lost everything." I opened the small folder on the table and slid a document toward her. She looked at it, blinking. "A trust," I said. "Your education fund. It's still intact. You can apply to other schools. Start over. Earn it this time." She stared at the papers. "You're still paying for me?" "I'm giving you the means," I clarified. "What you do with it is up to you." "And what about us?" she asked, voice cracking. "What are we now?" I didn't answer right away. Then, finally, "We're done pretending this is something it isn't." Her chin trembled. "You're cutting me off?" "I'm setting you free," I said gently. "But I'm not going to lie to myself anymore. You chose your path. Now I choose mine." Her tears fell freely now. "I'm sorry, Dad." I held her gaze. "No, you're sorry you got caught." She didn't deny it. She left without touching her tea. Later that day, Celeste's lawyer reached out. She was willing to cooperate in exchange for a reduced sentence and immunity from financial penalty. The Crown had offered her a deal if she testified against Julian Morrow. I signed the agreement with one line, approved under condition of full forfeiture of assets and reputation. She kept her freedom, but nothing else. Her public appearances vanished. No more charity galas. No more glowing press. Just a woman whose name had been scraped off every donor plaque in West London. Julian, on the other hand, was less fortunate. His pre-trial confinement turned into something darker. Word got around, cellmates whispered. The man who preyed on students and extorted families wasn't just disliked. He was hated. And when someone like that gets isolated, the guards stop noticing bruises. Letters go missing. Toiletries vanish. I didn't engineer that. But I didn't intervene either. Neil sent me a note one day. "Morrow's requesting solitary. Sounds like he's having a rough go. Karma's a beast." I folded the note and burned it. Because justice doesn't always wear a robe. Sometimes it arrives in silence. Sometimes in consequence. And sometimes through the cold, still absence of forgiveness. It had been nearly 2 months since the fallout when Amelia asked to see me again. I agreed on my terms. We met in a public garden near Holland Park, where the noise of the city never quite reached. She was thinner, quieter. No makeup this time. No curated presence. Just Amelia. She sat on the bench beside me, hands folded in her lap. "I wanted to say thank you," she began, "for not cutting me off completely." I nodded but said nothing. She glanced over. "I've applied to 2 schools. Smaller ones. Design programs. Ones where my name doesn't mean anything." "That's good," I said. She paused, watching the ducks glide across the pond. "I think about what I did every day," she said. "How I let Mum twist everything. How I let myself believe it was okay because everyone else was doing it." I didn't correct her. That excuse had been worn thin long before it left her lips. She looked at me again, eyes searching. "Do you think you'll ever forgive me?" I exhaled slowly. "Forgiveness isn't the point." "Then what is?" "Trust," I said. "And you broke it." Tears welled again, but she blinked them back. "I want to fix it." "That's not something you say," I said. "That's something you prove. Over time. With action." She nodded, lips pressed together, accepting the terms she didn't get to negotiate. I reached into my coat and pulled out an envelope. "This is for your rent. And groceries. 3 months. After that, you're on your own." She took it quietly. "And us." I stood, brushing off my coat. "I'll always be your father," I said. "But you're not my daughter right now." Her breath caught, but she didn't argue. I left her there on the bench, alone with the envelope in her lap and the weight of what she'd built and destroyed. Back home, I found Elsie on the sofa, sketching in her notebook. She looked up and smiled. "You okay?" she asked. I sat beside her. "Better, now." She leaned against me, her warmth grounding me more than she knew. "She's still your daughter?" she asked after a moment, voice small. "She used to be," I said. "But family isn't blood, else. It's what you do when no one's watching. It's how you protect someone even when it's hard." She nodded like she understood. "I'm glad you're my dad," she said. That night, I got a call from the hospital. Celeste had overdosed on sleeping pills. Not enough to die, but enough to send a message. The doctor said it wasn't clear if it was intentional. She asked to see me. I refused. Instead, I sent a payment to cover her medical bills through a lawyer. The note attached was unsigned. "Consider it closure." Because even the most fragile bridges burn eventually. And I wasn't going to rebuild what she so willingly destroyed. A year later, Julian Morrow stood before a judge and listened to the sentence that would define the rest of his life. 18 years. No parole for 10. I watched the footage from my private office, not with triumph, but with the grim satisfaction of inevitability. There were no outbursts in court, no dramatic proclamations. Just a broken man in a wrinkled suit, nodding as the gavel fell. Justice, it turned out, didn't need to be loud. It just had to last. That same morning, the first steel beam of the Raye spire was raised above the South Bank skyline. My company's new headquarters, half innovation lab, half architectural tribute, was named not after me, but after my father. Victor Raye Center for Advanced Design and Ethics. A mouthful, maybe, but every word mattered. The press called it an overcorrection, a rebranding effort, a PR play by a man who'd taken down the system that tried to consume his own family. Let them speculate. They didn't know the truth. This wasn't about revenge. It was about legacy. And I wasn't building for Celeste, or Amelia, or any hollow reflection of social prestige. I was building for Elsie. She visited the site with me once a week, hard hat slightly askew, sketchbook always in hand. She said she wanted to design something with windows that move when you breathe. I told her that sounded impossible. She said that's why she wanted to try. The scholarship fund, now bearing my father's name, had grown tenfold. Clive had managed it masterfully, funneling shares and donations from former colleagues who distanced themselves from the scandal but still admired the outcome. There were whispers of honors, an invitation to join a parliamentary ethics council, a chance to restore faith in corporate philanthropy. I declined all of it, because power doesn't need applause. It needs discipline. And I had learned, painfully, methodically, that the only thing more dangerous than unchecked ambition is unchecked forgiveness. I hadn't spoken to Celeste since the hospital. Her accounts remained frozen, her reputation dormant. She tried once to contact Elsie through a third-party email. I intercepted it, deleted it, explained to my daughter that sometimes protecting someone means saying no forever. As for Amelia, we spoke occasionally. She kept her promises, stayed enrolled, kept her grades up. She worked part-time at a print shop, paid rent on time. She never asked for more money. She didn't ask for love either. And I gave her exactly what she gave me, distance with dignity. That was our quiet compromise. On the day the final beam of the Raye spire was bolted into place, I stood alone at the top floor. No ribbon cutting, no champagne toast. Just me. A view of London. And steel that wouldn't lie, or betray, or beg. A legacy not forged in forgiveness, but in principle.